Hello everyone. I have a few days off. I basically had surgery yesterday. Now don't go worrying about me. It was minor. Okay? The surgery itself was less than an hour. I spent more time getting ready for surgery than the surgery was. But I've got pain and my activity levels have to be reduced. So instead of running around like a crazy person, I have to sit still. What better time to pull out a model? And I like the egg planes. I built the egg plane space shuttle and really enjoyed that. So I'm building the egg plane P-38 Lightning this time. I'm going to use the decals on it. I'm not going to mask and paint all that heavily. The canopy I will. Well, you have to. Well, let's open it up and see what it is inside. Okay? I've already opened the plastic baggies. There isn't a lot of parts to these. These egg planes really never had a lot of parts. Okay? This should be a couple of day build. Painting will take more time than building this model. As you can see, part sprues. There's 4 part sprues. Okay? 4 part sprues. 2 are semi-identical. There's 5 if you count the canopy, and it comes with a nice canopy. That canopy will get painted, dumped in future, painted, taped, masked, the whole works. Now the decals that come with it don't come with the canopy decals, so you want that canopy to look right, you're painting it. There's the decals that come with it. They're quite colorful, and I may not use the colors on them because I don't really agree with that. We will see. Okay? The Japanese like some color to their stuff. Anyhow, right here are the directions. And you can see the directions are 3 steps, and step 3 is canopy. Looks like it does come with a pilot figure. I don't see him. May not come, well, it's got to come with something because there's a spot for it right there. But I don't see him. Huh. Let me look again. Yeah, it says it comes with it. I'll find it eventually. You know how these things are. Oh, it doesn't come with a pilot figure. It comes with a seat. It's right there. Okay. I'm not going to put a pilot in. I don't want to paint a face. Probably what I ought to do is paint the Maquet face, because it's about all I got left on the Maquet kit and the stand. So anyhow, this should be a quick build. This is just something to keep my mind away from painful thoughts. Should go together quick. The space shuttle just had a few bad seams, not many. This one should be very similar. It looks like the main seams are down the fuselage of these two and this fuselage here. Okay? Where it connects to this. You can build it in pieces, which is a good thing. And sub-assemblies are going to be great. Painting, I'm going to get the Alclad aluminum paint out because, well, I think it should look that way. Specifically, if I can find it, I'm going to use the same aluminum paint I was using on the Maquet kit. This one. Dura aluminum. So I'm going to use some Alclad metal paints on it to give it a nice shiny finish. And this should be a fun little build. I will be back later and show you what's going on with it. As you can see, I've been working. I thought I'd take a midway stop and say a few things. Seam lines. Of course, camera non-focusing. There we go. Seam lines. Not so good. I'm going to have a lot of seam line work on this. I kind of figured I would. That is partially my fault. I'm divoting in too much when I clean up the sprue. Been a while since I've done this. So, of course, I'm going to have some freshman mistakes. It's fixable. I've done it before. The egg plane body itself is over here. Let me unclamp it. Again, big seam line right around the front, right around the midterm. Waistband, if you will. The wing parts went on very nicely right here. There's just a minor seam running along these edges. Okay, this part will glue on here. Maybe it's the wrong side. That would explain it. No, it's the right side. I'm rushing it a bit, so that is why, and I'm not going to try to rush it. Let's put it on this side and see if that's a little bit better. Well, you get the idea. It goes on there, so you can see the overall layout of this. I'm going to fix the seams on this and this before I put them together. The third one I've started, the other part of the fuselage I've started putting together here. I like to work from one end to another, gluing slowly, so I'm not rushing it, and I don't get imperfections here. While that's sitting, I'm going to get the canopy out, and we're going to future dip this canopy. Now, I talked about this more than once, but it's been a while. Okay? This thing's going to get masked. It's going to get painted. It's going to get painted first the interior color, and then the exterior color. That way, when you look through the glass, you see the interior color. Okay? By doing multiple paint layers, you get things right. You can't... I'm going to have to primer with the interior color paint, in other words. Now, some tricks to do in the future. First off, you cut it off the sprue, and you get it cleaned up. I'll get that cleaned up in a little bit. But I'll come back once it's cleaned up, and we're ready to do the future treatment. But there are some tricks to doing a future treatment on a canopy. I'll be back in a bit. Okay. As we were saying, we were talking about future dipping a canopy. I don't think it's necessary on that canopy because it's pretty nice. But what future can do for model plastic is quite a bit. This has been future dipped. Okay? It makes it cleaner and more clear. You can tell the difference between these two. Although this is a good canopy and was done well, I think it'll clean it up a lot. I did this because I wanted to see what putting a decal on there was like. You can't put decals on after you future dip. You have to future dip put the decals before. Now, part of what you need when you're doing future dipping, a closed box, a dust-free area, you need paper towel. Okay? Because what you're going to do is you're going to dip the item in the future, and then you're going to set it on the paper towel. The edges have to touch the paper towel. That's critical. If the edges don't touch the paper towel, the future puddles on there, and you get imperfections. So you've got to put the part on the paper towel. Second thing you need are some tweezers or something to hold it while it's in the future. Okay? Because you don't want to use your fingers. Your fingers will just get covered with future, and it gets messy, and it's a mess. So I got myself a pair of tweezers. Okay? This isn't a recommendation for a brand of tweezers. I just like these tweezers. And third, you need a container holding future. Now, I've seen people do this with paint other than future. Alclad has Aqua Gloss Clear. I've seen people do it with that, which is fine. It works. Not a problem. Okay? You can tell I've had this container future for a little while. I'm going to take my canopy. I'm going to duck it in there. Just put it in there. It's fine. And then set it on the paper towel. And close the lid of the box. And then don't disturb that for 3 or 4 hours. Minimal. Since it's a closed box, that future is going to take longer to cure up than it would otherwise. Now, I'm working on a tabletop there, so I got to clean that up. How do you clean a future? Ammonia. Windex. Ammonia or Windex will clean future up. Or you can just rub it out and make a spot of the table extra pretty. Like that. Actually, it wouldn't hurt for me to future coat the whole top of this table. Because that did really well. Anyhow, that's how you future dip a canopy. It's pretty simple. Be back in a little while. Okay, this is what you hope for when you're doing seams. It looked kind of rough around the edge, but when I started working it, it started vanishing. In other words, the squeeze method, where you squeeze the plastic together really tight, and some of the plastic squeezes out, worked really well. It's not going to work across here, so I'm going to have to fill that. But for the most part, that's going really, really nicely. Now, I haven't started on these two. This thing has very little panel line detail. It's an egg plane. It's not supposed to. So I'm going to go ahead and sand these two pretty flush out. Okay? There's going to be a line left there, which I'm fine with. The drop tanks, same thing happened with the drop tanks. I had to work the drop tanks pretty hard, but I got rid of the seam that runs along the edge of them. So this is progressing really nicely, okay? And that was my experience with the Space Shuttle egg plane, that there was just a few spots in there that really required putty. I haven't started on the secondary fuselage yet, and I get the feeling that that's going to require a lot of work. Speaking of which, can you see what I did on this one? I spilled some glue, and it's going to leave glue marks, and I got to sand that off. That will show through that paint. So I'm going to have some fun fixing that one. But anyhow, this is progressing really well, and I'm happy with it. I will talk to all of you soon. Okay, here we are on the egg plane. That is a bin of parts. All those parts have been cleaned, removed from the sprue. They're all ready for paint. What little glue has been done to these parts is done. These two parts haven't been cleaned up. They're too tiny and delicate. They're going to get put on right before paint because I'm afraid of them breaking. But for the most part, all these parts have been cleaned up. They're all different colors. I'll get the coloring done, but they're ready for primer. The egg plane itself, let's check in on where it's at. It's mostly done. Most of the seam work is done on it. It's gone really well. Okay. This has been, I like egg planes. I've never had a lot of trouble with them. Of course, there's some seam work you have to do on them. But it's never like crazy difficult seam work. I showed you in the last video clip that most of it went away just by sanding and squeezing and holding the parts together. There were too big of gaps along where this upper part's attached for that to happen. So they're getting puttied right off the bat. These I thought were okay, and then I took a look at them and puttied them, and you can see some residual putty. So obviously they needed the work. But I'm going to let that putty cure overnight. It's going to be dry enough to sand in a half hour or so. Letting it overnight just is much, much better. Putty I'm using, good old Bondo spot putty. Stuff works really, really good. Bonds the plastic really well. I mean, it's just a bonus all the way around. It's softer than the plastic. I know some people want their putty harder than the plastic, which I just don't understand. Because then when you sand, you remove plastic instead of putty. You know, the putty doesn't want to go. So I look for a putty that's softer than the plastic. Bonds the plastic well. This putty is thinned with lacquer thinner. So that means it's going to bind with the plastic really well as that lacquer thinner evaporates out. And it does bind with the plastic very well. So it's just a good all-around putty for working on models with. And it's cheap. $5 for a tube that'll last thousands of models. Anyhow, just wanted to show you guys where we're at. Moving along fairly well on it. It should be ready for primer tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow. I mean, I'm only getting about an hour a day on this, maybe a half hour. The one thing I got left other than that is the canopy. It has been run through the future bath. This is the end result of it in the future bath. It needs to be masked. So once this is masked, I can start painting. Mask the canopy, sand that, we can primer everything but the canopy. And then I need to mask the canopy and start painting it. Well, there you go. Quick update. I will be back when I've got something new.